You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
I'm really happy to be here. It's a pleasure for me.
Fonte with a scooping header.
I would like to make the most of with this opportunity.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot. Oh my word.
We ran around a bit like Bambi on ice. Really very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans. My name is Matt Markstone. I'm the host of the show. And no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time joining the show or you've been a long-time listener, thank you for making the show a part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. This is episode 53 of the podcast. It marks the beginning of the second year of production. Obviously, I still have a lot to learn, but it has been a great journey thus far. And I'd just like to take a second to thank each and every one of you for listening, for participating, those of you who have sent in questions and feedback, for all the guests and all that stuff. This wouldn't be possible without you. And each and every one of you has made me really feel like I'm a part of this. And this has been a great way for me to feel like I'm more in contact with the club, and the club that we support. And each and every one of you has had a part in that and making me feel like that. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of you. Hopefully we can continue to bring a high quality podcast to you each and every week. That is the goal, and we will do that for as long as we can. But as you can hear in my voice this week, I am extremely sick. Came off a migraine late last week, straight into the flu over the weekend. And so far I'm having a fantastic time. I'm home from work, which is not great considering I just had 3 weeks of vacation, but it is what it is. So we are doing this now. And I will keep this short because, as you can see, the length of the podcast is rather long, and that is in part due to my migraine because I could not keep track of what we were doing. So anyway, on episode 53, Cameran Alavi, you can find him on Twitter at Cam to the Yams, joins me to talk about the Christmas fixture list or the holiday fixture list, whatever you want to call it. We talk about those fixtures. We talk about him. We talk about the issues going on at Saints FC, and we'll get into all of that with Cameran. And then because I felt myself getting ill late last week and I wanted to try to talk to Cameran, the longer portion of the interview, I wanted to do that before I felt too bad, and you could really hear it in my voice. We didn't talk about the Fulham match. We actually recorded before the Fulham match, in an attempt to kind of get ahead of the illness. It didn't quite work, but we tried. And then, so Harry Holder, a member of the Saints Report team, this podcast, of course, is partnered with the Saints Report. So for all of your Southampton news and needs, be sure to follow the Saints Report on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The links are in the show notes. Harry joins me to talk about the Fulham match. He was part of the group that traveled to Craven Cottage, and we'll talk about that match and kind of what it means going forward. So, we have all of those bases covered, but instead of talking about that more here, let's go ahead and jump into the interview with Cameran Alavi. Once again, you can find him on Twitter at Cam to the Yams. And if you're a US based soccer fan at all, you should go ahead and follow him and read his pinned tweet, which is a list of 20 or so youth players that we can all kind of look forward and hope that will bring us some international joy here in the near future. So here's my interview with Cameran. I'll speak to you after that. I'd like to welcome to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all the SFC fans, Cameran Alavi. You can find him on Twitter at Cam to the Yams, and he's an East Coast Saints supporter. And we're here to talk about that and all of the fixtures and all the things that have happened over the festival period. So, Cameran, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time to join me, even with the temperatures dropping into single digits where you are. I hope that you are warm. Just so you know, it's about 70 degrees where I'm at right now.
Of course, Matt. Thanks for having me. And nothing warms you up like talking about Saints FC, right?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Cameran, we've been kind of talking for a few minutes, kind of off record, but Why don't we start with just kind of, your family, you mentioned is full of immigrants and they have come to the United States and they have brought with them a love of the Premier League, but not Saints. So you kind of have been influenced by your Manchester United supporting family, but you somehow have chosen Southampton as your club, which probably made things like the EFL Cup final and just, the one of the matches over the festival period kind of different for you. But why don't you start with just kind of telling us how you became a Southampton fan and what kind of made you choose Southampton over any of the other clubs that were out there for you to choose?
Sure. So like you alluded to, I been in the DC area my entire life. Aside from college, my parents were immigrants a lot of my family were immigrants from Iran right around 1980, and they've been in the DC area ever since then. And yeah, like I was telling you earlier, a lot of Middle Eastern families, South Asian families, etc., their default club is kind of Manchester United because especially back then, that was the really kind of world famous team, was gaining success in international tournaments and all that kind of stuff. So United is definitely a team that I do support in terms of I guess out of all the big clubs, all the big worldwide clubs, that would be my team that I would choose. But in terms of Southampton, I believe it was maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I just kind of was getting into Twitter, Instagram, all those things and looking around different clubs. And I had known Southampton from not only watching them on TV very sporadically, but also playing FIFA and learning about some of their great players and all that kind of stuff. And I noticed initially that they had a really cool kind of social media presence at a time when a lot of other clubs were still kind of scared to make that jump into the main social media platform. Southampton was one of the pioneers of that. I remember when they signed a player back in 2010 or 11, I don't remember who it was, but they had a behind the scenes kind of video with that player doing his physical and running on the treadmill with all those wires attached to him and a lot of cool different interviews and stuff like that. So I was immediately attracted to, I guess kind of the inside scoop that you would get at a club of Southampton's size that you might not get at a club like Manchester United or Real Madrid or something like that. So that was initially what got me into Southampton. And then one more example I'll use is about 2-3 years ago, the two guys from Men in Blazers did a convention in Brooklyn. I forget what it was called. I'm sure it was called BlazerCon or something, but Ralph Kruger, who's the chairman of Southampton Football Club, was one of the main kind of keynote speakers there. But, I was in Philly at the time at school, and the tickets were $250 per person for the whole weekend's conference. And obviously in college, that was about out of my price range. So I emailed Southampton's kind of PR department or supporter relations, and they responded almost immediately. I pretty much emailed them begging, I'm a huge fan in the US. I would totally freak out if I could go to this. I would be on my best behavior, represent the club well, blah, blah, blah. And then they responded almost immediately with, "Hey, Cameron, we've set aside 2 tickets for you at will call for this." So I brought one of my buddies with me, and we went to that conference for a day and a half and met Mr. Kruger. We talked to him a little bit, even kind of more intimately before his big talk. And then the few Southampton fans that were there went in and we gave him a big round of applause. And it was just really cool that, first of all, really cool to see him talk. But second of all, really cool that a club like Southampton would do that for someone they obviously don't know, just because they realize the importance of each and every fan. And just the fact that each fan can have a big footprint in terms of spreading kind of the gospel of the club, even more so than a fan of one of those much larger teams. So that's my little history of Southampton, and there are plenty of other stories as well. But yeah, like you said, the EFL Cup final was kind of my 2 favorite clubs against each other. I had joined up with some Southampton fans from the city that I met through Facebook and through all this different kind of stuff. And one of them gave me a free ticket to the match, and just, the hospitality was fantastic from everyone I met. And I sat right in the Saints section, and just the chants that they were doing, so loud, so passionate, really gave me shivers. And that's where we are today. And with all those highs come a lot of the lows as well. So you get really attached on both ends of the spectrum to the club. So I'm sure we're going to go into that later.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Every interaction that I've ever had with the club has been nothing but positive. And it's, of course, it's not that way for everybody. But the fact that, they are willing to set aside tickets for you to see Ralph Kruger speak or to attend BlazerCon or whatever it is. is great. And, I think for me, one of the things that really drew me to the club was, for me, a lot of it was the academy. I'm a huge,
that too, for
I'm
sure.
a huge Houston Astros fan. And so the academy, the farm system, that like player development is important. And at the time when I started to watch the club, that was, you look at all the players that had come through, and even if they had gone other places, they were special in that regard. And maybe that's tailed off a little bit. I'm not sure. It's tough to tell right now because we don't have the players from the academy necessarily getting as many first team chances now. And of course, Koeman had said, they're not good enough and all this stuff, but we'll focus on that later. But yeah, that's a pretty fascinating story. And thank you for being willing to share that. And once again, for coming on the show. When you went to Temple, what did you study while you were at Temple?
Sure. I was kind of a double major, math and economics, and then I was going to try to major in Spanish too, and that was just too much to do, all three of those. So snuck that down to a minor and just studied math and economics and watched a lot of soccer, went to a lot of pubs. Philly has a great kind of soccer scene, a lot of pubs and restaurants devoted to it. So it was a great place to go to school for a lot of reasons.
But you're not a Union fan though, correct?
I did actually intern for them when I was a sophomore in college. So I worked for them for a semester and had a really good time working for them, made a lot of great connections, met a lot of really cool people. And I definitely do like the Union, but I'm definitely also born and bred DC United fan, season ticket holder, all that kind of stuff. So I still will go to a Union game once in a while if I'm in town.
Sure.
But definitely a diehard, again, for better or for worse, diehard DC United supporter.
Yeah, well, hopefully you guys get that stadium gets done and you guys don't have to go to RFK anymore.
Yeah, they did a big send off for that. So hopefully it will be kind of awkward if we have to go back.
Yeah, but kind of a busy schedule, and we've been kind of planning this for some time. But we have several matches to talk about. We have Spurs, we have Manchester United, and then we have Crystal Palace, and because we're recording prior to the Fulham match, so we won't talk about that. But just looking at some of those matches, and I can just glossing over kind of Boxing Day a little bit, I was hoping that was just going to go away. It seemed like there were a lot of things kind of going around the team. And then when we played United, I was hoping it was going to get better. And then Crystal Palace kind of just said, no, we're not actually improving and we're so inconsistent. But we'll go ahead and discuss kind of all of those a little bit more in depth. Starting with Boxing Day. And for you, that when you were watching that match, what were you expecting? Were you expecting us to get any points out of that match, or what were you thinking going into it?
I guess the first thing I noticed was that the starting 11 was quite negative, I think. Our midfield kind of trio in the center was Romeu, Højbjerg, and Lamina, who on their day, they have good qualities, but those types of players kind of just scream that you're not necessarily playing with too much creative ambition in a match, and that you're definitely going to be bunkering down. And it was always obviously going to be a tough ask to bunker down against some of the talent that they have, that Tottenham has for 90 minutes. During the match itself, I mean, obviously a lot of rough things happened in the first kind of 60 minutes or so. I think another thing for me when we are so dedicated to playing it safe and playing it defensively is that when we do get forward, one of my philosophies as a coach is when you go forward, if you're going to start a counterattack or any kind of attack, try your best to either it ends with a shot on target, the ball going out of bounds, or something like that. But if you just kind of dribble into the middle, turn it over, for example, Redmond, when he was as left wing cutting inside, if you turn it over there, that spells disaster. That's a recipe for disaster when a team like Tottenham can counter back at you. So one thing I would have liked to see more was us trying to relieve pressure a little bit. And when we did have our sporadic attacks, just to kind of make sure that they were intelligently done, I think a lot of the issues came from careless turnovers, as, it was a holiday kind of, and a lot of different factors go into that. But yeah, it was definitely not the best performance. We scored a couple goals, which for Southampton in recent times, that's a pretty good accomplishment in itself. But again, yeah, I knew right from the start that we were going to be facing an uphill battle with the starting 11 that was put out.
Yeah, and part of the reason for the starting 11 that was chosen was because we had people out with injury. So you had Target there instead of Bertrand. You had Stevens playing, I think, instead of Cedric, and those are big losses. You look around, you look at our midfield with Højbjerg, Romeu, and Lamina. You can kind of trade any of those three out for the most part, and the quality doesn't drop off as much. but then when you look at our fullbacks, we can't really afford to drop Bertrand and Cedric, because I think the fall off of that is quite, it's a lot. There's a huge drop in quality, but it's nothing against the guys that are there after them. It's just they're just not quite the same players. But even so, I think Targett does an adequate job for most roles, for most things. He puts in good crosses. He's just not quite as speedy. He's not going to beat players one-on-one and things like that, which I think we look for with Bertrand especially. So. But like you said, I thought that several of Tottenham's chances, especially early, came from players like Romeu, who maybe hasn't been as good this year as he was last year, dwelling on the ball, getting caught, and kind of being dispossessed. And as soon as we do that, Spurs are attacking, and they're attacking in numbers, and they're smart about it. They are not leaving themselves open for the counterattack very often. We really struggled to create very many chances, but I remember tweeting during the game, we're just not good enough to be able to give them chances and expect to get anything out of the game. And sure enough, once the goal started flowing for them, it was pretty much off to the races.
Yeah, and as you said, I mean, I think a lot of our players were obviously playing uncharacteristically bad too. I mean, it was just one of those off days. But another thing about someone like Lamina, who has a great performance in him, has the physical attributes, but can also, be victim to an identity crisis of sorts once in a while, in the sense that you play him in the middle of the park when, if you're really trying to go out there and just bunker down, kind of park the bus and really play defensively, he's not necessarily the best player to do that, because even though he will get some tackles in, he's also one of those players who kind of doesn't have the positional discipline that someone like Romeu would have. If Lamina sees kind of a light at the end of the tunnel going forward, he'll, burst out and go all the way up and, leave some holes in the middle. So, and same with Højbjerg too. He's definitely not a natural, number 6, natural defensive midfielder. So it was a risky move to play those players combined with that tactic, I think, because they're not naturally the type of players who are just going to be, they almost get bored sitting in, waiting all game. Right. So and like you said, I think Romeu, it kind of threw the whole thing off, because Romeu's uncharacteristic mistakes stemmed from the fact that, maybe he was just trying to make something happen because nothing was happening. And a lot of times that happened with our wingers as well. It's been happening with our wingers for who knows how long. So I think it was just the combination of tactic and personnel was definitely not right in that game.
Sure. And we've seen those three play together when we were playing a back 3 or a back 5. But not in the 4-2-3-1 kind of setup.
Sure.
And I think it worked well playing against a team like City or playing even against Arsenal. I think they were used that way. And I think they did an adequate job there, but it just didn't seem to quite come off. And whether it was, who's going forward and who's filling in, and maybe the ideas just weren't quite, or the positional assignments weren't quite clearly communicated, it just didn't quite work. But I think we have to give a little bit of credit to Spurs for kind of exploiting a lot of the chances that they were given. But a lot of people had real issues with the way Southampton went about that match. At halftime, I thought that the scoreline at 2-0 was pretty fair. Just given the quality that Spurs had and kind of the mistakes that we made that allowed them to score kind of. But people kind of said like, no, like we were looking, pretty poor and not really up for it. And then I think the second half kind of confirmed what people were saying.
That's a good point as well. I mean, it was a distinct lack of effort from what we usually see, which could mean a million different things. I'll go into this later, but I think a lot of that has to do with the whole identity thing, and people are claiming that the club might be losing whatever identity or kind of dogma that it had. But yeah, there was definitely a lack of effort that, at that top level, making that much money, I think the least you would expect is when someone puts on the Saints shirt that they're at least giving their all when they step onto the pitch, which I think most of us would agree was not quite happening then.
Yeah, and part of that, you have your kind of connection with Man United, and I think my best friend is an Arsenal fan, and so I kind of watch Arsenal the same way. And there's been criticism over Arsene Wenger of not being able to really be the motivator of the players. He kind of expects the players to show up and kind of get up for it themselves. And sometimes it doesn't happen. And when it doesn't happen, that's part of your job as a manager, is to be able to motivate the team. And as much as you can talk about it, we talked about it before in here. It's not so much like Pellegrino does that. He doesn't really seem like the manager type of manager.
Sure. And for better or worse, he came from a club, Alaves, which, Cinderella story for them to even be in the first division of Spain. So he came to Southampton with kind of that most other clubs are better than us technically mentality.
But, moving on from that, there was a lot of stuff going around at that time about Van Dijk. There was, he wasn't in the squad. There were, speculation, all that stuff. And in between then and the Manchester United match, they announced that he had been sold to Liverpool and he was done. And it felt, I think some fans were upset that he had gone to Liverpool, but I think most of us looked at the price tag and his attitude over the past 6 months and just said, like, good riddance. If we use that money, and the key word there is if we use the money and invest into the squad, we could be in a much better situation than we are now. And to be fair, Van Dijk hasn't been great. He probably hasn't even been our best defender over the course of this season. But I think if you ask anybody, if you can take one player off the squad, they're taking Van Dijk every single time. But kind of going into United, it was a chance for the players to kind of show that they were focused and that the kind of whatever had kind of fell over them, it was a chance to put that away. And then I think the performance kind of went out and did that. But before we get to that, what was that day like? Because it's around the holidays. So were you with your family who is our Manchester United supporters, or were you back on your own, or where were you when that match took place?
Yeah, I was with just a couple of my friends and cousins, and we were all together watching it. And it was, I think the majority of them were not Man United fans, so they were just kind of rooting from a neutral perspective for a good game. It was an interesting game to watch. I mean, for a 0-0, obviously I'm biased because I have an affinity for both clubs in a way, but for a 0-0, I thought it was fairly exciting. It wasn't a boring 0-0. It was a smart 0-0, which completely different from the Boxing Day match against Spurs. So it's kind of hard for either of us to verbalize exactly what was different in that match, but I think the opposition had a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah. And kind of looking at that match, I didn't get to watch it kind of uninterrupted. I had, it was away with family. And so I was kind of watching on the laptop. At some point, people were talking to me, but it was going on and I was watching. I was overall pretty impressed with the way that we seem to show kind of more of the character that I would expect of us, Yeah. And the problem for me then stems from why the inconsistency? Why do we not have it on Boxing Day, but we have it against Manchester United? Why can't we carry that over then to Crystal Palace? Why does it seem like we are, constantly misfiring and just can't seem to get a real solid run going? But I think some of the big talking points against United were one that the Lukaku and Hoot kind of collision, that nothing was intentional, but obviously Lukaku was taken off the field, and then Hoot has since been diagnosed with a concussion and he's going to miss. He missed the last game against Crystal Palace. He's going to miss this weekend against Fulham as well. But then you kind of look at the team that we have out there, and you're kind of wondering if we were ever going to score. Long hadn't scored in something like 9 months or 11 months or whatever it was. And I thought there were a few instances where we might have been in trouble, but for the most part, I thought we played really well and we kind of held it together. But what were some of the things that you noticed about the match that were maybe a little bit different from Boxing Day?
Sure. So I guess starting right from the starting 11, having the presence of Sam McQueen, who I think did a really good job when he was deputizing last season. From all I've seen, he's been a solid left back on both sides of the pitch. Has a tendency to build chemistry really quickly with whichever left winger, I guess, he's playing with. So that was nice. It was nice to see him, even, a little bit different from Target, very different from Bertrand. Another thing you noticed from the starting 11, no Nathan Redmond. Maybe coincidence that we played better without him in the starting 11. Some people would say it's not a coincidence. And then the big thing was obviously Forster not being in the starting 11, which finally it happened. It seemed that he had been undroppable for 2-3 years now, even with some plenty of shoddy performances and individual errors. So McCarthy came in and I think did a really good job and very commanding and very definitely just more reliable than Forster's been recently. And we can all hope that getting dropped will be kind of a kick in the pants for Forster to step up his game, because like we've seen at Liverpool with Mignolet over the last couple of years too, not having a serious competitor is not good for a goalkeeper. They take their foot off the gas and and that happened. So that was all. I mean, that's just all related to the starting 11. On the pitch, like I said, it was hard to address exactly what went differently between the Tottenham match and the Man United match, aside from individually just the effort and the performances. Both center backs, Yoshida, Hoot did extremely well. Stevens at right back was absolutely fantastic, arguably the man of the match. I believe we dropped Lamina for Ward-Prowse. We had Tadic in there too. So players that know their role, know their identity, and are more intelligent on the ball, and they realize that when we get the ball back, it's not always about, oh gosh, we have the ball now, like this might be our only chance, let's go down and score. Instead of thinking that, they're thinking, okay, we got the ball back. Let's pass around for 45, 60 seconds, get a break. And then if we go down the field, maybe lose the ball in the corner, that's fine. You know, we've done this before. We'll defend again, but we just needed a bit of a break. So the personnel was different, and the personnel, in my opinion, this time matched the tactic of the manager a little bit better. And you have to give a certain amount of credit to Pellegrino for having the guts to drop someone like Forster. You don't need as much guts to drop someone like Redmond, but someone like Forster, who, like I said, was pretty much locked in for years. I definitely raised an eyebrow when I saw that he wasn't in the starting 11, but ended up being a pretty good decision. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, hard to explain, but I think it was just a better fit tactically this match.
Yeah, there was definitely some chatter online before the team sheets were released saying that Forster wasn't going to play. And I'll be perfectly honest that sometimes I just tend to just dismiss a lot of it because Twitter makes everybody a reporter. It makes everybody in the know. And it's just like, you know, we'll see. I'm willing to wait it out. Because for me, knowing something 5 minutes before somebody else doesn't really mean that much. But, eventually, Forrester, it did come out that McCarthy was going to start. And to be honest, like I had seen some of the under 23 stuff with McCarthy and he didn't look all that great sometimes, and I kind of thought that Forrester was starting to turn it over a little bit, but then I get maybe the Boxing Day match just kind of pushed it over for him. And I know a lot of people were happy to see McCarthy get a start. And I thought he did well. I thought he played very, very well against Manchester United. And as for the goals against Crystal Palace, not sure there's a whole lot he could have done differently to make those to make saves on those. But anyway, we'll get to that. But like you said, the tactics matched the personnel a lot better against Manchester United. And whether it was because we had come off of that EFL Cup defeat to them the year before, whatever it is, whatever made us kind of ready for that game. I wish we could do that every game, but it definitely seemed like there was something there that everybody was playing kind of to their full potential, and it showed. Yeah. And one thing I think is important is I think Tadic works best when he's in the middle. I think the more times we stick him out on the wing, the more times he kind of disappears. But when he is playing at his best, he plays in that kind of number 10, and he presses with the striker, and he tracks back and helps win balls back in the midfield, and then he creates a lot of chances for people. And I think that to get him going again, to get him going like he was going 2 years ago or 3 years ago, that would definitely increase the chances that we create. Whether it increases the goals because the strikers we have don't take those chances, I'm not sure. But I can definitely say that coming out of that match, I felt a lot better about things. Not that we were 100% out of the woods. A draw is only a point. But I definitely felt that we were building. We could have. It was a base to build on. But then of course we went into Crystal Palace yesterday, and we didn't really do that. So, is there anything else on the Manchester United match that you'd like to kind of point out before we go on to Crystal Palace?
Yeah, I think we were talking earlier, and you had mentioned a question you had, which is, it's a really good question actually. So I think you're the one who thought of this question was. Which team after that match would have to be more disappointed with the result and with their current place in the standings and contextually what the result meant? For me, I would have to say that Southampton would be the more disappointed team for the season as a whole at that point. I mean, obviously it's even been exacerbated since the Palace match as well.
Sure.
For Man United, I mean, City's just doing so well that I think Man United realistically is just trying to lock down number 2, worst case number 3 in the table. But Southampton knows that they should not be down there. I mean, they went to Old Trafford. What was that? Was that just last season? Maybe it was 2 years ago and won 1-0. They snatched at the end. So they know that they can hang with anyone on the pitch on their day. So I would say that they would be, up to this point, the more disappointed side, more disappointed club up to this point. I don't know if you would agree with that, but I think we shouldn't be, with the amount of individual talent we have, we shouldn't be anywhere near the relegation zone.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The only thing I would say is that it's the fact that City is the one that's winning the title right now, that they're running away with it.
It's sour a bit for sure.
Like you said, if you look at where we should be with the sale of Van Dijk, we kind of have the 9th most expensive squad. We're so far down the table now that we are actually, I've been keeping track of this on a spreadsheet, basically. Looking at the amount of money that each squad costs and where that would rank them on the table if you just ranked it by squad value, and then also doing it by where they are on the table, then we have the worst differential of anybody right now. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that screams a lot of, we're just not getting the quality out of the players that we should have, because I don't often think that we overspend on players. And so because of that, I think that we should be +1 or +2 based on the money we spend. So we should be somewhere in 7th or 8th. I think people would be accepting of that. But we're not. We're out of the relegation zone on goal difference alone. And I think the easy thing to do is to blame the manager, but I'm more and more leaning towards that's where the start of the issue is. It's just, he's not quite getting the most out of the players, and that's got to be the guy motivating them day in, day out. And then, you look at the board for picking the wrong manager maybe twice in a row and not being able to hold on to the managers that are good for the club. But going into Crystal Palace, I was hopeful. I don't know how you felt kind of going into it. I know Palace were on a better run of form, maybe. They have been playing well lately. You have Zaha, and when you think about Zaha running at either Payet or even Stevens, one-on-one, I don't like that matchup, but I did really think that we were going to be able to play a game, and I thought that 3 points was necessary there, and that would help kind of maybe jumpstart us and give us some momentum. McCarthy kept his place over Forrester, and then Pellegrino even mentioned today in his press conference that McCarthy would start again this weekend at the Fulham match. But when it was announced that who was out with a concussion, and that would give us a similar center back pairing as to last season with Stevens and Yoshida, which meant Payet had to come in and play right back. Going into the Crystal Palace match, how were you expecting 3 points? Did you feel 3 points was necessary or anything like that?
Yeah, I was expecting 3 points. Like you said, I trusted PA, and I think he actually, in my opinion, did quite a good job, over the course of the match. Against Zaha, there were plenty of moments where he kept up with him, stride for stride, pace-wise, as well as was able to shield him off the ball and use his body as well. So he did impress me, especially since he took that knock in the first half, and we thought he might have to come out after that. The starting 11 itself wasn't bad at all. That actually gave me a good amount of hope. But this match was, again, this is the most recent match, so I'm a little bit kind of more hysterical about this one. But as bad as the Tottenham match was, I think this match was a prime example of a manager that understands the Premier League versus a manager that doesn't understand the Premier League. So the first half, it's going to be really stupid. I'm pretty much going to be talking about weather for the next 2 minutes, but
that's fine.
The first half, I guess to preface this, Pellegrino, I think he does have the ability to coach a team to play good attacking football, but his teams, from what I've seen this season and last season, are built to play in one way, and they don't necessarily have that backup plan, which is a criticism of a lot of different managers. So what I saw during this match against Crystal Palace was the first half, we played very well, passed the ball around. Our 4 defenders all played well. Our attackers did okay, didn't turn it over too much. I believe we got our goal in the first half too. We did well in that sense. Shane Long finally got back on the score sheet, all that warm and fuzzy stuff. And then throughout halftime, it started raining harder and harder. Second half of the match, Hodgson, who I believe started in maybe a 3-5-2 with a lot of flair players on the outside, he adjusted at halftime. He went 4-4-2, traditional, got 2 strikers up top, just went more direct, less pretty soccer, less flair, because he knew that with the conditions, he would just have to bunker down and just wait for the opponent to make a mistake and a ball bouncing past them and all this different kind of stuff, using the elements to his advantage. Whereas on the flip side, Pellegrino made no adjustments, which, off the surface you might say, well, obviously he didn't make any adjustments. They're winning 1-0. They're playing pretty well. But this is a prime example of the conditions were getting worse and worse. You have to stop playing, and of course this is easy to say in hindsight, but you have to stop playing the kind of tiki-taka style that you might have learned in Spain, and just, almost like Palace, just bunker down and be more direct, be more almost adventurous in a way. And I'm not some sort of super genius football mind like a Guardiola or a Mourinho or whoever, but even I noticed the difference in the switch in tactics from the second half, from Hodgson switching to Pellegrino not switching, and how that kind of did us in that we didn't have a backup plan, whereas Hodgson immediately was not afraid to swallow his pride and changed the plan he started the match with, so it's hard for me to put into words all this stuff, but that was the main reason why we lost, and that's the main reason why I think this match above any other match has to be pinned on the manager.
Yeah, I think the start of the match, it looked like a match that was coming at the end of the festival period. It was a little bit sloppy. I'm sure the weather didn't help. It wasn't like either team was super dominant right at the beginning. We definitely had the majority of the ball. And then when we got the goal, we had wasted a few chances before that. I think Tadic had a chance. I think Long had a chance. I think Højbjerg had forced to save. But then, PA puts the low cross in, Long gets on the score sheet. And it looked at that point like something was alive there. We had been pressing, we'd been winning the ball back. And then as time went on, we stopped doing those things. Townsend had a strike from distance like 31 or 32 minutes in. And that was kind of the first real sign that I saw that our defenders and our midfielders were kind of backing off. We gave him the space and allowed him to shoot. And we have done that too often, and that we kind of get, I don't want to say complacent, but we score and then we kind of sit and we allow them to come onto us. And I think as the first half progressed, we did that more and more. And I think that when halftime came and it was only 1-0, I think Hodgson at that point is saying to his players, like, this is fine. Like, we're okay. And I think Pellegrino's telling his team the same thing, but I think Hodgson is definitely right in that sense, in that he knew what was happening and he could see what our players were doing. Whereas I think Pellegrino needed to recognize the fact that we were sitting back too much and encourage the team to press forward, because we've done this before. We've gone behind, we've gone in front, and then we've allowed teams to come back into the game. We did it at Arsenal. We've done it several other times. And so to do that again, it like you said, it's on the manager at this point. And it comes more into play when you look at the substitutions that were made. When Hodgson substituted Van Aanholt on for Johan Kabay at halftime, and then Sacco on for Schlupp, that's the substitution I think that really swung in Palace's favor.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And
we didn't know how to cope with him. He seemed to cause us all kinds of problems. And then you look at who we brought on. We brought on Davis for JWP, and then Højbjerg came off for Gabbiadini. And at that point, it seemed like we just lost control of the game.
Yeah, there was a desperation move to bring on Gabbiadini.
But I think that you give up, any semblance of midfield control at that point, and now Palace have all of the ball. And even when it was level, we never looked like we were going to be the team that we're going to press on and win that match.
Yeah,
and I think that for Saints fans is frustrating. And I think that had we gotten the draw against United, and then had we gotten 3 points against Palace, I think people start to inch back towards giving the manager a little bit more credit and giving him a little bit more time. But now I don't know. Last year we had a manager with 8th place in a cup final, and the football was boring and he's gone. This year, I'm not sure there's anything that Pellegrino can do now to kind of bring the fans back onto his side.
Like we both said, I think a lot of credit has to be given to the opposing manager for making those adjustments. And yeah, what Pellegrino did was, again, it was another case of the tactics I don't think matched up with the personnel that he put out there. So, for example, I was fortunate enough to go to the EFL Cup final, Southampton and Man United, and that was one of those matches where, one of the many matches of last season and this season, where Ward-Prowse was kind of playing the right midfielder in the 4-2-3-1 formation. And against teams that attack as much as, a superior side, quote unquote, such as Man United, Ward-Prowse thrives in that right midfielder role because he has more space to operate because their opposing left back is going forward. He has the time and space to put in either early crosses or get to the byline and put in dangerous cutbacks and all that kind of stuff. But against quote unquote kind of worse team, or a more middle of the road team like Palace, who think defense first, structure first, and then we'll go forward, he is not the player to play that right wing position, especially if you're going to go ahead in the match and then sit back. You need wingers who, if they get the ball, they're just going to take it and just relieve pressure even for a minute or two. So again, Ward-Prowse is obviously not that type of player. He's not a speedster. He's not a pacey winger in the traditional sense at all, as we all know. So it was another example of, if you're going to play Ward-Prowse in that situation, I just don't think that was the right player in the right position with the right tactic in a way. I mean, like I said, he did really well against Man United. He did well against, I forget who it was. There was one of those other big teams we were playing last year where he also played the right midfield position and had a great time and put in so many dangerous crosses. I think he put one into Gabbiadini, who scored one. So if you're playing against that type of team, that's the situation to put someone like him at the right wing position. But when you're playing against a more defensively oriented team, you don't want a center midfielder out wide because, again, like you said, you're inviting pressure. You're saying, okay, this guy's not going to be a huge threat when he's on the ball. So let's get the ball to his side and wait for something bad to happen so we can come counter them.
Sure. Coming out of that match, I think everybody's disappointed. I think people want the manager to go. But then, if you've been on Twitter or whatever, you've been watching that, Adam Blackmore and Adam Leach have both said they've asked for interviews with Ralph Kruger or Les Reed and haven't gotten anything. And if anybody's going to get those interviews, it's going to be those two. And Adam said on the Total Saints podcast, one of the podcasts that he is a frequent guest on, a regular guest, he's asked for that repeatedly. And they finally got that interview with Kruger, and both of them released, I think, interviews either yesterday or the day before. I think it was the morning of the Palace match. And listening to Blackmore's, there were a couple of things that people have latched on to. One, Kruger called us a small club. And then secondly, he gave the manager his full backing. And so to me, that signals that the manager's not going anywhere. We're kind of stuck with this even after the Palace defeat. And I'm not really sure what to make of it other than, I guess the problems are higher than just the manager, and maybe it does have something to do with the board, but I'm not sure what to do to change that.
Yeah. I mean, I read those interviews, listened to the interviews as well. And I think last season with Puel was really the first time that I can remember since I've supported Southampton that it really felt like the board and all the higher up decision makers were actually affected by the complaints of the fans. I feel like in a vacuum, in their own world, they wouldn't have sacked Puel based on what he accomplished. And what he accomplished was quite good for a club with only a middle of the road, squad value and all that kind of stuff, as you were saying. But yeah, like I said last time, I think last season was really when I feel like they were affected and they were almost pressured into sacking Puel when they otherwise might not have done so. So I think a lot of this season has been damage control in a way. And when Kruger says that he fully backs the manager, I think, again, this is all speculation. We don't know what's going through their heads. But in my opinion, I think he's scared to sack Pellegrino, to do something rash like that, because I don't think he wants. Because, I mean, what I know about Ralph Kruger is I truly believe that from my interactions with him personally, I think he is a good man and an ethical man and someone who does definitely genuinely care about the club. So I think a big reason why he's saying that he's supporting the manager even through this tough time is that he doesn't want the club to be seen as one of those hectic clubs, one of those manager merry-go-round type clubs like maybe a Swansea, just not to throw them under the bus, but as a recent example. And I think we all agree that, something needs to be done at some level, whether it's the manager or someone else. But like I said, I think they just don't want. It started last season with the Puel complaints from the supporters, and that's what led to his sacking. But I think they're really preoccupied in recent times with the image of the club rather than letting the football do the talking on the pitch. Yeah,
and it's tough to kind of put it all in perspective and then have the loss at Crystal Palace and kind of try to, compartmentalize it. And, he tried not to blame it on the manager. He did put a lot of it on the Virgil van Dijk situation. And some people have said he's put a lot of it on Van Dijk himself, but I think a lot of it was on that situation. He says there was a cloud kind of over the club and that the emotional environment was very fragile and things like that. And I get that. I understand that there's a balance there, but it's not just the Van Dijk situation. It's the fact that, we made kind of a moral stand even though officially, as far as I know, no bid came in for Van Dijk over the summer, it was very clear that Van Dijk wanted to leave, and he was told no. But you make that stand and you get maybe an extra 10 or 15 million pounds out of the deal in January. But really, I'm not sure that's helped us at all to this point in the season. I'm not sure that if you're going to say that cloud has been there all season, maybe it was the wrong move. And hey, they took a chance and maybe it backfired or whatever. But it's things are definitely not looking great right now. Whether even with Van Dijk being gone after the Crystal Palace match, I'm not sure that the team is all that much different mentally, or if the manager is going to be able to change that going forward. Maybe a different manager can do that, but like you said, we don't want to be the club that's constantly changing managers and things like that. But maybe that just means you have to pick the proper manager.
Sure.
When you do get the chance, and maybe we haven't done that as much, but based on those things and where we are right now, would you say that the manager needs to be removed, or would you be willing to kind of continue on with him and hope that we spend some of this money in January, or does it even matter? Like Kruger said, is it bigger than just the manager, or is it bigger than what any one person can change right now?
It's such a loaded question that it's interesting because there have been a few serious red flags. For example, against Tottenham, it was just a pure lack of effort for any number of reasons, but you would never see, a performance like that from someone like, under someone like maybe Diego Simeone or something like that. Like the bare minimum is, blood, sweat, and tears when you put on that shirt. So that was a red flag to me. Another red flag was what I was just talking about in the Palace match of not adjusting on the fly and not being used to the situation and the elements that you'd get in the Premier League from where you might get somewhere else. On a slightly more promising side, it was nice to see, I shouldn't speak, so negatively about a player on our team, but it was nice to see someone like Forster dropped for one or two matches to give a chance to someone else, someone like Redmond, who's hopefully finally almost, he hasn't played that well in a while. So someone who's actually getting almost punishment for not playing well and he wasn't getting picked the last, couple games. So there's some promising things in there, and Pellegrino's definitely not afraid to shake things up. It's tough to say because, like I said, with Palace, it's definitely a case of a manager who's not used to the league and the pressure of the situation that he's in. He came from a very small club where anything is a good result. Even if you lose like 1-0 to Barcelona, that's a great result. So it's tough to say. I mean, it's also tough to say when it would be too late. I guess the optimist in me, I don't think we'll get relegated. I think we have what it takes in the squad talent-wise to win a good, out of the last kind of 18 matches, win a good at least 5 of them, if not more. I don't know, to be honest. I mean, like what Mr. Kruger said about the Van Dijk situation kind of looming over them. And I mean, good luck to Liverpool having a player on their squad who's willing to just completely check out like that if a bigger club comes in. Yeah, I mean, I guess instead of beating around the bush, I would say another 2 or 3 matches. If we don't win in the next 2 or 3 matches, I think that's got to be it. And they have to swallow their pride and stop worrying about the image of the club, which I know is extremely important to Kruger and the rest of the board. But at some point, you just have to admit you were wrong and just pull the plug on something that's not working. And I'm looking at our fixtures. The next 3 are at Watford, at Tottenham, and at home to Brighton. If we get less than 2 points from those 3, that has to be it for me, I think.
I think if we get 2 points from those, we'll be in the relegation zone.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
It is tough. And I'm not, based on the comments that Kruger made, and maybe that's the kiss of death. Maybe sometimes when the board says, the manager has our full backing, it's 2 more matches and he's gone. But like you said, I don't get that from Kruger. I think if he says that, then that's what they mean. And I think that they would much rather have us just kind of trust the system through the scouting and through all this other stuff that Pellegrino has bought into the system, and it's going to work, and they need us to do that. And I always like to say that I think it's easy for me sitting in the United States to say, yeah, trust the system. I pay my cable bill once a month and I get it. I don't spend my time driving to the matches. I wake up 10 minutes before the match starts and I watch it. And you have people that are going to these matches day in, day out that are spending their hard earned money on, whether they're traveling to the away matches or whether they're going to home matches. This is not a cheap or easy thing to do. and to sit out there and suffer the elements and do all this and see the club that played attacking football just 2 or 3 seasons ago, and to see the players that we have sold kind of continue to move on and progress in the things that they do, and to watch us kind of fall down the table. I can't fault people for complaining and wanting the manager to leave.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, completely. I mean, they're completely justified to do that. And one thing you brought up that just kind of sparked my memory a bit is that as a whole, the identity of the club, I believe it has a strong identity, at least compared to a lot of other clubs in England. We know Southampton usually brings to the table a good academy, a well-run club, kind of family club, all that. But it's been hard for them to adjust to the fact that being in the Premier League now for, I guess, the 6th or 7th straight season, what's been tried and true in the past might not work. Like, for example, when I did have the chance to spend a few minutes with Chairman Kruger, kind of off the record, talking to him for a bit, one thing that he admitted to us, and I don't know how public of knowledge this is, but that he admitted to us that, yeah, it's true, Schneiderlin wanted to leave, but we said, you know what, like, we want you to honor your commitment, spend 1 more year at the club, work your butt off, and then we'll give you your dream move, in that case to Man United. And then he said they did the same thing with Wanyama. He wanted to leave, but they said, hey, you know what, stick around for 1 more year. You know, we will put your shift in and give back to the club that's given this opportunity to you, and then we'll sell you on to whatever club you want to go to, whatever. And I guarantee you they tried to do the exact same thing with Van Dijk, but every personality of every player is different, and that didn't work with Van Dijk. Van Dijk responded to that by switching off instead of stepping up. So just a little thing like that it's another one of those swallow your pride moments and realize that every situation is different, and that black box or whatever they talk about, you know, what's tried and true is not going to work every single time. Every individual is different, and the Premier League is an ever changing kind of environment and realm. So that's one of those identity things that I think they failed at least in this season in the case of Van Dijk, and that I can definitely see how that would affect the club as a whole from the top all the way down. It's always going to be difficult because we had the black box, and because that style of scouting worked for a few seasons, other people catch up. Other people looked at what Southampton was doing and said, that's the thing we're going to do. And then somebody's going to figure out how to do it better. And we were plucking people out of the Dutch league, and we were siphoning people off of Celtic, and now other people are going to do the same thing. And then people are coming to us and doing doing that to us as well. And it's to be expected, but we have to, there has to be one more adaptation on the scouting front and in the boardroom. And I'm not quite sure it's there. And, I don't know. And that brings us to a question from a listener, because for so long we have kind of always gotten the bargain kind of buy. And some of them were really, really, really good signings. But Dan, who is at Holy Hoiberg, asks us, would you rather Saints go out and buy proven quality this window, given the reality of a relegation fight, or that they trust the black box and stick to the transfer strategy we've used for years? So that is one question to us. And then Rich Lacey, who is at UTS 180 MAC, says, our normal transfer policy is brilliant when you have a manager that knows what he's doing, but unfortunately at the moment we have a clueless wonder that is virtually untouchable, while Ralph and Les try and sort the team out. So they're kind of two kind of different things. One, we don't trust the manager, which we've kind of established between us as well. But what would you want to see Saints do? Do you want to see us go out and spend maybe the 60 million or the 50 million that's available from that Van Dijk deal on somebody who's proven quality and that's going to come on? And if so, where in the team do you want that? Or do you want to just see us kind of stick to the strategy and trust the system? Well, the first one's a really good question. The second listener, Rich, brings up a good point. It is definitely tough to trust a transfer policy inherently when we've already alluded to the fact that a lot of times the tactics the team goes out with do not match up with the 11 that's put out onto the pitch, and it's just not a good fit. It's not the right personnel for whatever the manager is going for in that specific match. So it's tough to say. I mean, I definitely think we have to spend some of that money right now. I mean, every club that's in a relegation battle looks to do whatever possible to strengthen their squad in January. That's one of the benefits of having this window in the middle of the season. As I was mentioning before, my number one area of need would be the right wing position, which, is not inherently one of the most important positions on the pitch for most teams. But ever since Mane left, and even Mane himself was not really a right wing traditionally, we haven't really had that, because you've noticed the last 2-3 years, we've, the majority of the time it's been Dusan Tadic out at right wing, and he's simply not equipped. His skill set is not to be a winger. And then we've tried Ward-Prowse there, who we've seen him play well quite a few times, but it's not his natural position either. And as I was mentioning earlier, we have Buffon now on the left, and he's starting to grow into the league and doing better. On the right side, we don't have anyone like that. I mean, we need someone who can just take the ball, beat a player, relieve some pressure, and just do traditional winger things. I mean, there's no point of playing that position or having that position in your formation if you're not going to have the right person to fill that. So in my opinion, that's the number one place we need to fill in. I actually don't think that Van Dijk was quite as undroppable as a lot of people do. I mean, the pairing that took us to the EFL Cup final without conceding a single goal all tournament was Stevens and Yoshida pretty much the whole way through. And we have Gardos coming through. We have Bednarek, who we signed. I'm not too worried about our center back depth, to be honest. So I would go with the right wing position as number one need. And then in terms of everywhere else, strengthening the squad, that's where I do think that we should actually stay true to our identity. I mean, if a huge problem with the team right now is a lack of effort, then maybe instead of spending £10 million, £12 million on a squad player that's playing a third of the time or half of the time, call up someone from the academy to fill that role. I'm sure they could do that just as well. For example, and I don't want to pick on any one player because we have not really seen him play, but the example of Jan Bednarek, there's a young center back we signed. Obviously hasn't played much, so you could definitely classify him as a squad player or even more of a prospect. Why couldn't we call up Alfie Jones or another player from the academy to fill that role? I mean, Alfie Jones is in the first team, but I would definitely say Bednarek is closer to the first team than anyone from the academy like that. So I think in terms of big purchases, we have that one position of need, which I alluded to. Maybe another number 10 to compete with Tadic, but just around the club, I would love to see the academy kids given more of a chance because of, I think that they would bring that blood, sweat, and tears that I was mentioning earlier. And that's something that we sorely need. If our manager is not the best at bringing that out of the players himself, why don't you put the players in there that would organically bring that out there?
And you mentioned maybe buying some proven quality, and then you mentioned the position of right wing. So to you, are these rumors of Theo Walcott? Is that what you're looking for in that spot? Do you think maybe he's the guy to come in and, I'm not sure he's a leader per se, but provides maybe some stability and some of what we need on that right wing. And then you have a front three or that attacking range of midfielders with Walcott on the right, Tadic in the middle, and Buffon on the left. You can supplement with Redmond when you need. Does that kind of sound more like what you're looking for?
Yeah, it almost slipped my mind until you brought it up. But that's, in my opinion, that would be a good fit for the side. Assuming Pellegrino is going to keep trying to play his attacking football, as he says, and not ever kind of have a backup plan, which he might not, then I think that Walcott would be a good player in that sense. It would be a good Southampton signing as well, just from the aspect of someone who came up through the system here and who knows the club and wouldn't be such a huge splash around the world like there are rumors of Balotelli, and that would just be something like, that's completely out of left field, and that would really make me lose faith in any sort of identity we had left as a club. But I think Walcott would be a good fit there, and definitely a traditional winger who, again, as a coach myself, I'm a big believer in balance. Like as a fan of the U.S. national team, if we're playing with someone like Yedlin on the right back who likes to burst forward, but someone like Tim Ream at left back. Speaking of Fulham, Tim Ream at left back, who is a center back playing left back, not a bad player by any means, but there's no balance in that team because you have one side attack, the other side defend. So if you put Buffon and Walcott, on opposite sides, that's more of a balance. And in my opinion, that kind of is almost like a feng shui kind of thing. That would kind of put those pieces to the puzzle better a little bit. So again, I'm being super optimistic, but yeah, I mean, if right wing is a position of need and we happen to be linked with Walcott, I don't think that's a coincidence. I do think that that's a pretty substantial rumor.
I haven't really been a believer in the Walcott thing as of yet because it's not what the Southampton way is, kind of, and whatever it actually is, but sometimes, if you look at championship teams, they go out and if they're missing that one piece, you recognize that and you go get that piece, and you feel that need. And sometimes it works at the opposite end as well, where if you are facing something like a relegation battle, you have to address your needs. Now, you can't really take risks. You have to just kind of go and say, like, this is what we need, and we're going to pay up to do it, because the risk of dropping to the championship is real. And that the long-term impact for a lot of teams, it could be detrimental. You look at a team like Sunderland, who's obviously just having a tough time in the championship alone. They are not bouncing right back. And if you can go down and bounce right back up, okay, like maybe you're okay. But I don't think that even where we are right now, I don't think we would hold on to the same squad. I think we'd lose a lot of players. I think you see more players trying to get out of the squad if we did drop down. And I don't really think that is good. And it definitely wouldn't be good for you and I being here in America, because we would not be able to watch probably even half of the matches legal or illegally. But man, I know we've gone over a lot, and hopefully it comes off somewhat coherent and structured, but I'm not sure if it doesn't. That's my fault as the host, but hopefully that's come off a little bit. But is there anything else that you'd like to add about the team before we kind of wrap this up?
No, we covered a lot. We obviously talked about the manager a lot. One thing I almost had forgotten about, I was doing some research for this podcast, and a couple players that we have out on loan. One player that I would love to see come back almost immediately would be someone like Jordi Claessy, who was obviously a bit inconsistent with the club, but he is an intense player. Like, exactly what you're going to get: a tough tackler, a kind of a bulldog in the middle. And those are all kind of like cliches of English players in a way, but as a Dutchman, he fits that mold too. And something that would almost, in my opinion, be like a new signing. Just getting that spark in the team. And I'm sure even when he wasn't playing well with the first team, I'm sure he brings that spark to training as well. Like someone like him, someone like even Harrison Reed, who I also think quite highly of. Those are players that really get stuck in the middle of the park there, and that can only be good for a team that really needs any sort of jolt. So I'm wondering if they're going to be taking a look at some of their lone players too, and because it's such an extraneous kind of almost emergency situation, I'm interested to see if they address any of those lone players as well.
Yeah, and I think whatever you can do right now to inject some intensity and some enthusiasm into the team, you do it. I don't think there's anything you don't leave anything out at this point. You have to get that intensity back, and I don't know what does it, but hopefully the manager can figure it out, and that ultimately that's what he's paid for. That's his job is to manage, and it's not just tactics. It's players and personalities and all that other stuff. And I know sometimes at the club, it's not, the day-to-day transfer stuff that he's necessarily involved with, but he is the one who talks to those players and is around the players, as much as anybody. And that's his job to kind of do that. So, hopefully he does, because otherwise I think we're in for a tough rest of the season. And, I know, online is a small portion of the fan base, but the mood is definitely not great. It's not very optimistic.
Like I said, there has been a lot of stuff behind the scenes going on the past 5-6 months, but I think we both agree that he's definitely down to his last couple of matches, in our opinions. I mean, you understand where the chairman is coming from in terms of, like I was mentioning earlier, keeping the identity and trying not to make the club seem like it's going through some sort of a hectic period, but we definitely could use a shakeup if things don't turn around very quickly. So anyway, I mean, I really appreciate you having me on this podcast, and this is genuinely the first time I've really talked so in depth about Southampton Football Club, maybe ever, because there are not that many people to talk to around here. So it felt cool to kind of get that stuff off my chest and hear what you had to think as well, and our differences in opinions and our similarities in opinions. And thanks for having me. And I've been a listener for a long time, and I'll definitely be getting this one out to as many people as possible, just because I'm arrogant and I want people to hear me.
I appreciate that. And this podcast has always been, it's about getting to know other fans, and it's about me learning more about the club and being more involved. And so it's always good, I think, to hear. And I did want to ask you, just a few kind of, other questions. I noticed you travel quite a bit. You were in Spain. I think you went to Malaga. I think you went to the Bernabeu. So I just want to ask you, what's your favorite stadium that you have visited?
That's a great one. That's a great question. Man, RFK Stadium. No, I'm just kidding. That's a good question because I have been fortunate enough to be at different stadia around the world, and I have this giant bucket list of all the derbies I want to go to, all the huge rivalries around the world I want to go to, and Atletico versus Real was the first big one I crossed off my list. I'm sentimentally a big fan of where the Union play. Used to be called PPL Park, now it's Talent Energy Stadium. It's right underneath this beautiful bridge, going into New Jersey, right along the Delaware River, and really nice setup like that. I mean, the Metropolitano, which is Atleti's stadium, absolutely gorgeous as well. And then being able to go to a match at Wembley Stadium was unreal, and the atmosphere even made it even better. So I mean, I hope in a year's time I can tell you that Audi Field is my favorite field when that finally opens. But right now, I think for the context of why I was there, I would probably go with Wembley. I know that's cliche, but it was just good. Gorgeous there. Amazing.
It's good.
Wait, no, hold on. The Maracanã in Rio. How could I forget? I went to the Germany versus France quarterfinal in the World Cup, and that is like the hallowed ground of soccer. So I don't know how I forgot that, but that's definitely at the top of the list for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I did see that your boss approved your travel, your vacation for this summer. So are you indeed going to Russia?
Yes, I'm starting a beginner Russian class in DC starting next Tuesday night. So it's like a 10-week class or something. So I've been studying with Duolingo a bit, but I figured I had to take a class because there's really no substitute for learning it in person in front of other people. So yeah, I'm only going to be there for 6-7 days, but I'm going to a few matches. Really hopeful that I'm going to be able to go to at least one, if not two, of the Iran matches as well, even if I have to take one of those long trains elsewhere into the depths of the country. But yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, it's sad that the U.S. won't be there, but it's a really amazing experience going to a World Cup, meeting people from all around the world, learning about different cultures and languages, and just playing pickup soccer with everyone. So
sure.
Yeah, if you want to come, I'll have a pretty big suitcase. So.
Oh man, you mentioned the language thing. You speak 3 languages currently, right?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I grew up speaking Farsi. I have a good competency of that just from being around it all the time, but I'm not super great at it. And then I studied Spanish and Portuguese, throughout my entire kind of schooling. So,
okay.
I guess 4 languages.
Yeah.
Not 4 full languages, but going to Brazil for the World Cup really solidified Portuguese for me. So that's like my favorite language now. It's a beautiful language, beautiful country, beautiful culture. And yeah, that was definitely another reason I wanted to go to Russia, was to challenge myself from that language, which has been extremely challenging. It's a very difficult language. So.
Well, yeah, it's not really related to any of the other languages that you've spoken in the past.
Not at all. So hopefully this class helps me a bit, and then I'll try to be kind of the translator for my family while we're over there.
That's awesome. I wish you safe travels and all that stuff. I hope it goes really, really well. It's impressive. All right, take care, and sorry once again for keeping you up so late.
No problem. I appreciate it, man. Thanks.
All right, later.
Bye.
And once again, that was Cameran Alavi. I'd like to thank him for taking the time to join the show. And like I said, if you're a US-based listener, follow him along for national team stuff. Maybe you're a DC United fan. You like keeping up with that kind of stuff. That's all good. And I'm actually really looking forward to following his journey to the World Cup this summer. Special thanks to Cameran for joining the show. But now let's go ahead and jump to my interview with Harry Holder. As mentioned previously, Harry is a member of the team at the Saints Report, so be sure to follow along at the Saints Report for all your Southampton news and needs. The Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook links are all in the show notes below. So Harry joined me to discuss the match against Fulham, about his trip, the atmosphere, and everything else. So here's my talk with Harry Holder. I hope you enjoy it. We'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Harry Holder. You can find him on Twitter at HarryHSFC. He is part of the Saints Report, and he's here to give us a brief report on the Fulham match. So, Harry, last time I spoke to you, It was after another cup run, or not a run, but a defeat to Wolves. So a little bit better circumstances here, but welcome back to the podcast and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on again.
Oh, no, my pleasure. And as always, this podcast is partnered with the Saints Report. So I appreciate you guys, the support that you provide the show and being partners with it. And you were part of the traveling fan group that went to Fulham on Saturday. Mm-hmm. Over 5,000 strong. So, can you just, before we get into the match, can you just kind of tell us what that was like, what the atmosphere was like inside Craven Cottage?
Yeah, it was very good, especially from a Saints point of view. But I mean, to have almost like a third of the fans there, pretty incredible because, usually with these third round cup ties, you're not going to get too many people there. But, it wasn't exactly the furthest journey. And I was surprised, because we got more tickets than we were hoping for. So we had to go and get some more from the club. But yeah, really good atmosphere from the Saints fans and, strong support for the boys.
Yeah. And that's not something that I think we've maybe expected, I guess. It hasn't seemed like the support for all of the players has been there necessarily. And I think some of the players still got a little bit of shtick or if we can say abuse, I think is some people are calling it online. But, I guess that's just frustration coming up, boiling over. But, I think it's really good to see that many fans are willing to travel and whether it's just the day out in London or whether it is to go and kind of be a part of the group, whatever it is. I think that the support was there. And even on the stream that I was watching, it was clear that you guys were overpowering a lot of the Fulham fans in terms of your chants and support and things like that. So I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
So cheers to you guys and everybody else who was there. But when the lineup came out, I know we were kind of worried about some things based on injuries and things like that. But when you saw Stevens, Bednarak, and Yoshida all in the lineup, were you expecting that back four to shape up like it did, or were you expecting something maybe a little bit different?
I was certainly expecting those to be the players playing, but to have Jack Stevens has played right back a couple of times this season before, and I think he's done okay there. He's not a natural right back; he's a centre back, but I think he's done a decent job there. But then it turns out he was playing in the middle with Yoshida, and Bednarek was at right back. I wasn't too sure how that would go because last time I saw Bednarek, who didn't exactly set the world alight, but he actually played very well, I thought. So I was pleasantly surprised by our defensive performance, especially.
It seems like Bednarek's performance has divided some opinion. It seems like Southampton put out the stats of him, his defensive stats and things like that, and he seemed like he did really well. I personally was kind of, I guess I just looked for the right back to do a little bit more attacking, and I should just understand that that's not necessarily going to be his game. He's going to be more kind of defensive, and I guess he did okay. I mean, there were a couple crosses that he allowed in, but other than that, I think he was just fine. And when you look at, he's not the paciest of players, and he was up against a fairly pacey winger, and he did, like you said, I think he did all right looking back at it and being maybe a little bit more objective.
Yeah, he's not the fastest. He's definitely not attacking. We had Ward-Prowse playing down the right anyway, so I think he sort of left the attacking side to Ward-Prowse, which, I completely understand that. But from a defensive point of view, I thought Bednarak was especially good considering, that's just only a few more minutes of his season, to be honest, in the first team.
Yeah. And I mean, last time we saw, I think those three in the lineup together, I want to say that was last time we talked. It was against Wolves and they played in a back three.
I think it was,
and they got torched. So, much better from those three, in general for this match. So I think that was, it was fairly decent. But, overall, looking at the match, do you think the result was fair, first of all?
I think it probably was, yeah, because, we had most of the chances. I can't really remember too many clear-cut chances for Fulham, but then in the second half, they were almost completely on top of us. We sat back as we have done this season with 1-0 leads. And I mean, we the fans haven't appreciated that too much because, we'd like to see us go on, maybe push on, get a second and third goal, but so they had most of the possession, but we had, I'm pretty sure, all of the clear-cut chances, and we could have put a couple more away. But on the balance for the whole game, I think, by a single goal, I think that's a fair reflection of the game.
Yeah. I mean, we did a couple chances. Højbjerg created a chance. He picked somebody's pocket, laid it off to Long, and then wound up getting it back and hitting the keeper with it. I think Stevens hit the crossbar off of a corner. And I think the only chances that Fulham really had, there was one where McCarthy came out, tried to catch it, and it kind of spilled away, and then they fired it over the bar. And I think they had one other chance. But, like you said, even though we managed to pull out the 1-0 win, there were I think, some worrying signs based on the fact that we sat so deep with a 1-0 lead. And those are the games that we've kind of continued to maybe concede goals in the Premier League like that. Does that make sense to you? Or is that something that you saw?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, we saw it, thinking, there are quite a few games this season where we've been ahead by one goal. We've sat back and they've got in. I can think of, the Arsenal game. Yeah, we drew 1-0. That's a good result against Arsenal, but we were leading for about 85 minutes. We just completely sat back for almost the rest of the game. Didn't take the rare chances that we had, and they scored late on. Same against Huddersfield. Go 1-0 up, sit back. So I can say at least we didn't concede this time, but I think it's still worrying that even against Fulham, they're a mid-table championship side this season. I don't really think they'll be trying to push on for a playoff spot. I think that's probably not going to be their ambition for this season. But they're a decent championship side. But the fact that we're still sitting back on the 1-0 lead against and letting them have chances and come forward, we seem almost scared to go on. I think that is very worrying considering the situation we're in. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess going forward, you would hope that the manager would take something from that and learn from that. But it doesn't seem like he is really willing to move away from that. But we'll have to wait and see. But do you think the players themselves can take anything from this and maybe use this as something to build on going forward? Yeah, I'd like to hope so. I mean, it's a cup game, so I suppose the result in the grand scheme of things, it really only matters if who we get in the next round, whether we go on and get a cup run at the end of the season. You're not going to remember a 1-0 win against Fulham as a turning point if we then go out in the next round. But yeah, hopefully, it is a win on the sheet. Hopefully the players can, start to kick on. Maybe that's given them a bit of confidence that they've been needing, because we haven't looked at the same side that we have been over the last few seasons. Lately, we've been looking completely shot of all confidence, especially in some players. So hopefully, they can take the clean sheet, take the win, and go and build on it and say we can come better off the back of this. All right. Anything else jump out to you on your either on your trip down there or anything else? Just just at the end of the match, the final whistle goes, but then I was surprised to see so many players looking almost dejected. Gabbiadini, I can really understand why he's frustrated. He hasn't been getting much, if any, game time. Like, he's on the bench again, only got 10 minutes at the end. Maybe he should have scored with the chance that he had, but he looked awful when he came at the final whistle. He was head down, sulking off the pitch. Didn't really clap the fans until he was almost already off the pitch. So he looks down, and I just hope he gets a chance. I mean, he is a good striker at the end of the day, and I think if we play to him, we'll score goals. But whether we see him at this club in February is another question, because there have been rumours that he wants to leave, but who knows? And then another one, Nathan Redmond, just did not look happy, which is, I mean, it's perfectly understandable. There are fans booing him, which I can't understand. He hasn't been in the best of form recently. He has made mistakes, but hey, hasn't everyone? And I think just get behind him, support him, then maybe he'd be better. Maybe he could use our support at the moment, and maybe he'll come good. Yeah, I think it's always difficult because you understand the fans' frustration, but sometimes the abuse and things that are said to the players and just getting on his back before he even. Sometimes you think, like, he gets out there on the pitch and he's trying to put himself in the game, and then the first thing he hears is just fans on his back, and it's like, why am I even doing this? So it's 100%. It's all So anyway, Harry, I appreciate you doing this, and I thank you for my pleasure being a part of the Saints Report and for supporting the podcast, and thanks for traveling and supporting the players. Thank you. No problem. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Once again, that does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. My name is Matt Markstone. I'd like to thank you for joining us. I'd like to also apologize for Darth Vader seeming like he's breathing into my microphone. Hopefully I'll be better next week. As always, this podcast is partnered with the Saints Report. You can get in touch with them for all of your Southampton news and needs on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. The links to those are in the show notes. Additionally, you can get in contact with this show on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. We're at SFCDELL_IVERY on Twitter and Instagram. We're at SFC Delivery on Facebook. There is no underscore in the Facebook address. The artwork for this show is done by the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. For matchday edits, polls, competitions, and more, be sure to check out the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. Matt, who runs the page, has been a huge help.
He's been a guest on the show several times, and he really helped me get this thing going. So be sure to check out the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. Music for this episode comes from the Free Music Archive. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits that you're hearing now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. If you're enjoying the show, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It only takes a few minutes and it really helps spread awareness about the show. Additionally, if you're new, you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Acast, Google Play, TuneIn Radio, or wherever you get your podcasts to be sure that you do not miss future episodes. The most current episodes are available on SoundCloud, and most episodes are available on YouTube as well. We'll be back next week with another episode, and until then, remember that together, we march on.